Welcome back to our ongoing study. Today we're jumping into Acts chapter 12, and it's quite a chapter. We're looking at this intense moment in early church history.
It really is. You've got this massive collision course set up, haven't you? The Roman Empire's power, represented by King Herod, running smack into the early Christian church there in Jerusalem.
Exactly. And for this discussion, we're drawing heavily on the teachings and insights compiled by the You Need Faith in Jesus team. They've done some really thorough work on this passage.
Our goal today really is to go verse by verse, get a deep understanding of how God works through, well, some pretty tough stuff, suffering, intense prayer, his own sovereign plan to push his kingdom forward.
Even when things look completely hopeless, right? That seems to be a key theme.
Absolutely. Especially when
Yeah.
things look hopeless. Acts 12 shows us tragedy, like James's martyrdom, almost immediately followed by this, frankly, unbelievable rescue of Peter.
And then a very sudden, very stark judgment on Herod. It's quite the sequence.
It is. It reminds you, doesn't it, that following Christ isn't about an easy life. It's not promised comfort.
No, definitely not. But it does show God's active hand, achieving his purposes no matter what obstacles are thrown up.
Precisely. So the church in Jerusalem had reached this point where it was just too influential, too visible to be ignored by the powers that be.
Yeah, they couldn't fly under the radar anymore.
No. And the core narrative here involves, as you mentioned, James's death, Peter's miraculous escape, and then Herod Agrippa facing God's judgment. So let's set that historical stage first.
Okay, sounds good. Let's start with verse 1 of Acts chapter 12. It kicks things off right away with the political powers moving against the church.
Right. Verse 1 reads, "Now about that time Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church."
Okay, first question, which Herod are we talking about here? There are a few in the Bible.
Good question. This isn't Herod the Great from the Nativity story, nor Herod Antipas who killed John the Baptist. This is Herod Agrippa I. He was the grandson of Herod the Great.
And the sources describe him as quite the politician.
Oh, very much so.
Right.
A master of political survival, you could say. He understood that keeping the religious leaders in Jerusalem happy, especially the Sadducees and the temple authorities, who really didn't like the Christian movement.
This was key to keeping his power.
Exactly. So this persecution wasn't just random spite. It was calculated. It was about pleasing the right people, consolidating his own position. Public relations, essentially.
And that word the KJV uses, vex, stretched forth his hands to vex. What's the weight behind that word in the original Greek?
Yeah, kaku. It's much stronger than just annoyance. It means to inflict harm, to mistreat severely, to afflict. It implies official, calculated violence.
So it was a deliberate campaign of oppression, not just harassment.
Absolutely. State-sponsored violence aimed at intimidating believers, maybe even eliminating the leadership. Herod wasn't just causing trouble. He was trying to stamp out what he saw as a threat.
And tragically, his campaign has immediate, devastating results. Verse 2 is stark. And he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword.
The impact of that, it's hard for us to fully grasp, I think. James wasn't just any disciple. He was inner circle. Peter, James, and John, one of the sons of thunder, remember?
Right, a foundational leader.
To have him executed, just like that,
Yeah.
it must have sent shockwaves of grief, but also, frankly, intense fear through the entire church. Like, are we next?
And the method with the sword, does that tell us anything specific?
It typically signifies beheading. This is often how the Romans executed more prominent individuals, not common criminals. So it highlights the public, brutal nature of it. Herod wanted this to be a statement.
A deterrent.
Exactly, a terrifying message.
And this forces a hard theological question, doesn't it? Because this wasn't unforeseen. Jesus actually prophesied something like this for James and John.
We did. Back in Mark chapter 10, verses 38 and 39,
Yep.
Jesus asked them, essentially, can you handle what I'm going to go through? Can you drink my cup, share my baptism? And they say yes.
And James's death. That's him drinking that cup.
It is. It's a sobering fulfillment. And it raises that really difficult question. Why James? Why was he taken while Peter, as we'll see, is delivered? They both had faith. The church was praying.
Right. It sort of shatters that simple idea that if you just have enough faith, God will always rescue you physically.
It does. It forces us to confront God's sovereignty. Sometimes deliverance is by the sword into God's immediate presence, ministry complete. That was James's path.
And sometimes deliverance is from the sword, like Peter's, so earthly ministry can continue.
Precisely. Both outcomes serve God's purpose, both bring him glory, but from our human view, it looks unequal, even unfair. We have to trust his wisdom in that difference.
So Herod sees this works politically. Verse 3 says, because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. He doubles down.
He does. It's pure PR now. James's death got a good reaction from the establishment, so why not go after the biggest name left, Peter? The timing is also significant. Then were the days of unleavened bread.
That's the Passover festival week.
Right. He arrests Peter during this really important religious festival. But then, verse 4 tells us he plans the execution after the festival.
The KJV says he was intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. Let's clarify that Easter translation.
Yes, that's important. The Greek word is Pascha. Everywhere else, it's translated Passover. The KJV translators use Easter here, but it clearly means the Passover period.
So Herod arrests Peter during Passover week but holds off on the execution. Why the delay?
Well, executing someone during such a holy time was generally frowned upon, maybe even against custom or law. Plus, waiting until after the festival, when huge crowds were still around or heading home, would maximize the public spectacle. Political theater.
He wanted the biggest possible impact, and he wasn't taking any chances with Peter escaping. Verse 4 details the security. Delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him. Break that down for us. What's a quaternion?
A quaternion is a squad of 4 soldiers, so 4 quaternions. That's 16 soldiers in total.
16 guards for 1 fisherman.
Maximum security. They'd work in shifts, probably 4 shifts of 4 guards over 24 hours. The text later implies Peter was chained between 2 soldiers inside the cell, with 2 more likely guarding the cell door or nearby.
Wow. 16 guards, chains. Herod had seen apostles escape before, hadn't he, back in Acts 5?
He likely had heard about it, yes. So he's pulling out all the stops, using the full force of the Roman military system to hold one unarmed man. From any human perspective, escape was absolutely, completely impossible.
Okay, so that's the setup. King, prison, 16 guards, execution scheduled, impossible odds. Now, verse 5. This is the turning point, isn't it?
It's the crucial pivot, the KJV says. Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him.
What a contrast. All that earthly power on one side.
The king, the prison, the guards, the chains.
And on the other side, the church's only strategy, prayer.
That's their weapon. Not politics, not revolt, not trying to break him out. Prayer. But notice the description. Made without ceasing. This wasn't just a quick, God help Peter.
No, the original Greek word here is important, right? Ektinos.
Very important, ektinos. It literally means stretched out, like a muscle strained to its limit. It conveys intensity, fervency, earnestness, even agony.
So not just continuous, but intense.
Hugely intense. Think of an all-night prayer meeting, people pouring out their hearts, wrestling with God, fully understanding what was at stake. Peter's life, maybe the future of the whole Jerusalem church. It was desperate, fervent prayer.
This really highlights a core principle for them, doesn't it? When things are humanly impossible.
The first, and maybe only response, is this kind of united, intense, persistent prayer, ektinos prayer. They knew they couldn't beat Herod's army, but they could appeal to heaven's authority.
And the fact that it was the church praying together, that corporate aspect, seems vital too.
Absolutely. There's a power in that unity. Believers gathered, focused on the same desperate need. It multiplies the spiritual intensity. It's what James talks about later, isn't it? The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much.
And Paul in Ephesians praying with all perseverance for all saints.
Exactly. This collective agony, this ektinos prayer, was setting the stage for God's answer. And it came dramatically.
Right. Let's move to that moment. It's the night before Peter's planned execution. Verse 6 describes Peter's situation just before the miracle.
And when Herod would have brought him forth, the same night Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and the keepers before the door kept the prison.
Okay, just pause there. Hours from likely execution. Chained between guards, and he's sleeping.
Sound asleep. It's remarkable.
I mean, after seeing James killed, knowing what's coming, how do you find that kind of peace?
It's almost supernatural, isn't it? It speaks to this incredible trust in God's control, whatever the outcome. Whether he woke up to die or woke up free, he seems secure in God's hands.
Like those Psalms about God giving his beloved sleep, even in the midst of trouble. Psalm 4.8, Psalm 127.2.
Exactly. He was living out that trust. Deep, profound peace.
And then the intervention, verse 7. And behold, the angel of the Lord came upon him, and a light shined in the prison.
An immediate divine light filling that dark cell, bypassing all the security.
And he smote Peter on the side and raised him up, saying, Arise up quickly. And his chains fell off from his hands.
Notice that detail.
Yeah.
The angel smote Peter. The Greek ptasso means struck him, hit him.
Why? Why not just gently wake him?
It maybe suggests just how deeply Peter was sleeping. Out cold, the angel had to physically jolt him awake, but then, boom, the chains, symbols of his bondage, just fall off. Instantly useless.
God's power just nullifies the physical restraints.
Completely. And then the instructions in verse 8 are so mundane, almost.
Yeah. Gird thyself and bind on thy sandals. Cast thy garment about thee and follow me. Get dressed. Let's go.
Simple, practical steps. But Peter's still processing. Verse 9 says he wist not that it was true, but thought he saw a vision.
He thought he was dreaming or hallucinating.
Yeah, it was so outside of normal reality, so unexpected. His first thought was, this can't be real. It felt like a dream, a vision, which, is understandable.
Totally. And then they just walk out, past the guards.
Verses 9 and 10 say they passed the first and the second ward, the guard posts. The soldiers must have been asleep, or maybe supernaturally unaware. Unhindered passage.
And the final obstacle, the iron gate that leadeth unto the city, a massive gate.
And it opened to them of his own accord. Just swung open. God's power isn't stopped by iron gates any more than it's stopped by Roman guards. Like Revelation 3:8 says, when God opens a door, no one can shut it.
It's only when they're outside in the city street and the angel disappears that it hits Peter.
Yes, verse 11. And when Peter was come to himself, he said, now I know of a surety that the Lord hath sent his angel and has delivered me. He finally realizes, wow, this was real. God sent an angel.
It's such a clear statement about angelic ministry, isn't it? Not just a metaphor.
Absolutely not. Real angels, acting on God's command, intervening in the physical world. Delivering believers, as we see here and as we'll see later, executing judgment too. It confirms passages like Daniel 6.22, Psalm 34.7, Hebrews 1.14 angels are ministering spirits.
So Peter's free. Where does he go? Logically, he heads straight for the prayer meeting.
Oh, exactly. Verse 12, and when he had considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark.
John Mark, who later wrote the gospel. And his mother's house was clearly a central meeting place for the believers.
A known safe house, a hub, where many were gathered together praying. Just as verse 5 said, they're still there, praying intensely.
And the answer to their prayers is literally standing outside knocking, which leads to this almost comical scene with Rhoda.
That's wonderful. Verses 13 to 15, Peter knocks. A servant girl named Rhoda comes to the gate. She recognizes his voice.
The voice of the man they've been praying for all night.
And she gets so excited. So full of gladness, the text says, that she forgets to actually open the gate. She just runs back inside to tell everyone.
Peter's at the gate, and their reaction, thou art mad.
They tell her she's crazy. The very people praying for his release dismiss the news as madness. It's incredibly human, isn't it?
It really is. Why do you think they disbelieved? They were praying for this very thing.
Well, maybe they were praying for the impossible, but actually believing the impossible had happened right then, right there. That was harder. The reality of Herod's power, gives his recent death. Maybe it felt too big.
So even when Rhoda keeps insisting, constantly affirmed that it was even so, they still don't quite buy it.
Their next explanation is telling. Then said they, it is his angel.
Meaning like his ghost,
Right.
or his guardian angel appearing in his form.
Probably the latter. There was a common Jewish belief that a guardian angel could sometimes take on the appearance of the person they protected, especially near death. So they're basically saying, it can't be Peter. Maybe it's his angel. They'd almost accepted he was gone.
Wow. They were praying for a miracle, but couldn't believe it when it showed up at the door.
It's a great lesson for us, God often answers way beyond what we expect or even imagine, sometimes so much so that the answer itself seems unbelievable. Ephesians 3.20, right? He does exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think.
So finally, Peter keeps knocking in verse 16. They open the gate, see him, and they're astonished.
Understandably. And Peter, in verse 17, quiets them down, tells them the story how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he gives a specific instruction.
Go show these things unto James and to the brethren. Now wait, Apostle James was just killed, so which James is this?
Good point. This must be James, the half-brother of Jesus. He had clearly risen to become the primary leader of the Jerusalem church by this time. We see him in that role later in Acts 15 and Galatians 1.
Okay, that makes sense. So Peter reports to the new leader, and then...
Then wisely, Peter departed and went into another place.
He gets out of Dodge. Smart move.
Prudence, yeah. He knew Herod would be tearing Jerusalem apart looking for him. His safety was important for his future ministry, so he laid low for a while.
All right, so Peter's safe. The church is amazed. The narrative now swings back to Herod. What happens when he finds out Peter's gone?
Verses 18 and 19 describe the scene the next morning. No small stir among the soldiers, it says. Chaos.
I bet. Herod must have been furious and humiliated.
Absolutely. And Roman military law was brutal. If your prisoner escaped, you faced their punishment. So Herod interrogates the guards. The 16 men assigned to Peter finds no answers.
And what does he do?
Commanded that they should be put to death.
16 soldiers executed because of a miracle they couldn't stop. It just shows the cruelty of that kind of unchecked power.
It really does. Arbitrary, deadly power. After this, perhaps trying to move past the embarrassment in Jerusalem, Herod heads down to Caesarea, the coastal administrative capital.
And he gets involved in another political issue there.
Yes, verse 20 tells us he was angry with the people of Tyre and Sidon, these Phoenician cities to the north. We don't know the specifics of the dispute, but Tyre and Sidon were commercially important cities that apparently depended on Herod's region, Judea, for their food supplies. Herod had cut them off or threatened to.
So they were in a bind.
Desperate. They needed to make peace. The text says they managed to get Blastus, the king's chamberlain, a high official on their side, probably through persuasion or bribes, to plead their case to Herod.
Okay, so this sets up a big public event where Herod will receive their delegation.
Exactly. Verse 21, and upon a set day Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat upon his throne and made an oration unto them.
Royal apparel. Sounds impressive.
This historian Josephus actually adds a detail here. He says Herod wore a garment made entirely of silver. Imagine that. Sitting on a throne, outdoors perhaps, sunlight glinting off this shimmering silver robe, a dazzling display of power and wealth.
Designed to awe the delegation from Tyre and Sidon.
And it worked. Or at least they reacted in a way designed to flatter him. Verse 22. And the people gave a shout, saying, it's the voice of a god and not of a man.
Whoa, that's blatant blasphemy.
Extreme flattery. Born of desperation perhaps, but yes, blasphemous. And here's the critical point. Herod's reaction. He didn't correct them. He didn't refuse the divine honor. He apparently soaked it up.
Big mistake.
Huge. Fatal mistake.
Okay.
Verse 23, and immediately the angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not God the glory, and he was eaten of worms and gave up the ghost.
Immediately, just like the angel showing up for Peter, the judgment is instant.
Swift, decisive. The same angelic power that delivered Peter now brings judgment on Herod. Why? Because he gave not God the glory. He accepted worship due only to God.
While the church was giving God glory for Peter's rescue, Herod was stealing glory for himself.
Precisely. And the consequence was gruesome. Eaten of worms likely refers to some kind of severe internal disease with worms or maggots, possibly intestinal gangrene. Josephus confirms Herod suffered intense abdominal pains and died in agony 5 days later.
A terrifying end. And a stark warning about pride.
Absolutely. Don't take God's glory. Isaiah 14 talks about the fall of Lucifer due to pride. James 4.6 says God resists the proud. Herod is the ultimate negative example here.
So Herod, the persecutor, meets this horrific end. How does the chapter conclude? What's the final word?
It ends with another powerful contrast. Verse 24. But the word of God grew and multiplied.
Despite the persecution, despite James's death, despite Peter's imprisonment, the gospel message kept spreading.
Exactly. Herod, representing human power, is dead and decaying. The word of God, representing God's kingdom, is alive, growing, unstoppable. Persecution ultimately couldn't stop it. Maybe it even fueled it.
That's a consistent theme in Acts, isn't it? Opposition arises, but the word grows.
It is. God's purpose prevails. And the very last verse, verse 25, sets up the next major phase of that growth.
And Barnabas and Saul returned from Jerusalem when they had fulfilled their ministry and took with them John, whose surname was Mark.
Right. Barnabas and Saul, who we'll soon know mainly as Paul had been in Jerusalem delivering famine relief funds, now they head back to their base in Antioch. And crucially, they take John Mark with them.
The same John Mark whose mother hosted the prayer meeting.
The very same. So the event that led to Peter's rescue also connects this key young man with Barnabas and Paul, setting the stage for the first missionary journey that kicks off in the very next chapter.
Wow. God weaves it all together. Opposition, prayer, deliverance, expansion.
It's an incredible cycle. Now, if we sort of pull back and think about the big takeaways from Acts 12 for us today, what stands out?
Well, the power of prayer has to be number one, right? That ektinos prayer.
Undeniably. The power of corporate, persistent prayer. Acts 12 is maybe the Bible's clearest example of united, fervent prayer unleashing God's power in a seemingly impossible situation. It challenges us, doesn't it? Do we pray like that when crisis hits? With that intensity, that persistence, that desperation?
Yeah, it sets a high bar. Casual requests maybe aren't enough sometimes.
Then there's the hard truth about the sovereignty of God in suffering. We have to hold James's death and Peter's rescue together.
It's not a simple formula. Faith doesn't always equal physical deliverance.
No, God is in control, but his deliverance takes different forms. Sometimes it's into glory, like James. Sometimes it's for continued service, like Peter. Our job is to trust his wisdom, even when we don't understand the different outcomes. To believe he's glorified in both.
That requires real faith, trusting when it doesn't make sense to us. What else?
The reality of angelic ministry. This chapter makes it clear angels aren't just symbols. They are real agents of God, involved in protection, deliverance, and even judgment.
So we shouldn't discount that supernatural dimension of God's work.
No, we should be aware that God has resources beyond what we see, ministering spirits sent to help us, as Hebrews says.
And finally, the flip side of Peter's deliverance, Herod's judgment.
Right. The deadly sin of pride. Herod's end is a chilling reminder. Taking glory that belongs to God is incredibly dangerous. It invites his opposition. Humility, on the other hand, giving him all the glory for every good thing, is crucial.
So summing it up, Acts 12 shows that worldly power, no matter how strong it seems, Herod's kingship, Roman guards, iron gates, it ultimately fails.
It does. But the praying church, focused on God's glory, empowered by his Spirit, relying on his word. That's the force that endures and multiplies. The king died, but the word grew.
That's the bottom line, a powerful lesson.
And maybe a final thought for reflection. Think about your own life. Are there situations where you feel chained, where escape seems impossible, like Peter in that cell?
We all face things like that sometimes.
Right. And in those moments, are we pacing anxiously, focusing on the chains? Or can we find that deep, trusting peace Peter had while simultaneously engaging in that fervent, persistent ektinos prayer, believing God can intervene even when it looks impossible?
Shifting from anxiety to trust and from casual prayer to fervent intercession, that's the challenge.
That really is the heart of it.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. To really make sure you've absorbed all the details and nuances of this chapter, we strongly encourage you to use the provided flashcards. They'll help you review key terms we discussed, like ektenos and kaku, and the key figures and events.
They're a great tool for cementing the learning.
And after reviewing, please take the quiz associated with this lesson. Passing the quiz is important. It will officially mark this lesson as complete in your study series.